Welcome, and I'm excited about you guys who have purchased the LAM Leaders Curriculum Set and all that God's going to do with you and the couples that you'll be ministering to. And in this video, I want to help you guys in the application section of your Leaders Manual show you how to rate your surveys so you can place your participants in groups. And it's a pretty simple process once you get the hang of it, but I just wanted to explain it so while you guys go through it, you have a good understanding of it. So first of all, when you guys get your applications, you're going to be rating each one on from 4, 3, 2, or 1. If you rate them a 4, I'll just tell you what each one of them is. So if you rate them a 4, that means they're going to be a facilitator. A 3 means they'll be a potential facilitator. And because sometimes you don't get enough 4s, it's nice to have those that you can raise up. So that's the 3s are the potential facilitators if you don't have enough 4s. 2s are your everyday average couple. And 1s are couples who are in crisis and probably need more help and time and attention on them. And the reason why we have ratings for 1s is because we want to make sure that we don't have too many 1s in one group, because that could be more difficult for the group. So what we're going to do is I explain in the Leaders Manual, we explain the ratio. But here I wanted to help you guys learn how to actually rate whether someone is a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So let's get into the application that you guys have. So the first question, after they fill out all their basic information, there are 6 questions that we want to look through that's going to give you guys the information of whether or not they're 1, 2, 3, or 4. And the criteria that we're looking for are 3 things. First thing is the level of crisis versus stability of their marriage. If someone is in crisis, if they're really in need, then they're not going to be in a place to facilitate a small group. So that's probably the first and maybe one of the most important ones that we look for. That tells us whether they're a 1, if they're in crisis, or if they are very stable and have stability in their marriage, and that at least gives them the potential to be a 4. So the second criteria that we're looking for is their willingness and hunger to grow. If they are there of their own motivation, they're there to grow and work on themselves and get what they can out of it, then that is the second criteria. And then the last criteria is simply whether or not they're willing to be leaders, whether or not they're actually willing to be facilitators. Because we don't want to put people in that position who are saying, no, I don't want to do that, and we actually ask that question. So those are the 3 criteria, and each question we go through, all 6 of them, we're going to be looking for those criteria in those questions. So the first one, why do you want to participate in this marriage workshop? And this, we're really hitting on 2 criteria here. The first one is kind of the hunger level, their willingness to grow and learn themselves. And there's one answer in that question that actually hits on the crisis. And this is one I actually look for really early on. If they check that I'm trying to save my marriage for divorce, that gives me a little, okay, they could be a crisis couple. It doesn't necessarily mean they are, but if they have that plus a couple of other answers and other questions, then I consider them a crisis couple. So that's a strong one to look for. Of if they're saying, I'm trying to save my marriage for divorce, put that on the side burner, and that could mean that they could be in more of a crisis state. The other 2 questions that you want to look for that can be a bit of red flags are, my spouse wants me to attend, or I'm not sure why. Both those show just a little bit less hunger and self-motivation. And so that's a lesser category in terms of their willingness and their hunger to grow, but that's something to look for as you keep moving forward through the next questions. So the next question is, it says, which statement best represents you? And it's really talking about our willingness to open up and share with other people. And the only question that you really need that you need to be concerned with is if they check the I am unwilling to share certain parts of my life with others, that again can show a lack of their willingness to grow and to enter into the full workshop and be fully present. So if you see that with the previous questions, that can start giving you a red flag. And it doesn't mean they're necessarily in crisis, but it means you're probably not going to put them as a facilitator as a 4 or 3 if it seems like they're not even wanting to be there or willing to open up and share with others. Okay, so question number 3, and this one is talking about their relationship with God. So which statement best describes your current spiritual state? Now, Any answer is okay except for these two. If either of these are checked, it doesn't mean they're in crisis, but it does mean that you probably won't want to put them as a facilitator. So if either of these are checked, then don't put them as a facilitator. And that is, I don't really know God, but I would like to. That's awesome. They're aware of that. They're wanting to move forward. But if they don't have a relationship with God, it's probably not good to have them as a facilitator. And the last one is, I don't want a relationship with God. That again, if they're willing to come to a marriage workshop that has God in it, that's awesome. But if they don't want that, they're not supposed to be a facilitator. So don't put them as a 4 or 3. All right. Moving on to question number 4. This one is really important. We're talking about the emotional state, and here is the other indication of crisis or not. And so the next two questions, 4 and 5, are good indications of where they're at in terms of crisis. So most of these issues, I'm sure lots of different spouses experience throughout their marriage, but the one that's really important is if they say, I feel hopeless and alone most of the time. That is a good indication that they could be in crisis. That's something that's going on right now. They're in that place, and that it's continuous. The other ones, I feel closer to friends and family than my spouse. I love my spouse, but we have some major issues to work through. I love my spouse, but we definitely could be closer. I love my spouse, and we both feel well connected. All those could be present even in a 4. So those ones are okay. It's really that first one of, I feel hopeless and alone most of the time. So if you get that, that is another indication of crisis, okay? And so the number 5 is a little bit more specific. Which of the following best describes the area of greatest need in your marriage? Now, this is the one where you, again, get to find out if they're, in crisis or not. And this one just has all different kinds of things. We're separated, we're dealing with or recovering from infidelity in our marriage, we're dealing with or recovering from addictions in a marriage. We have very little spiritual, emotional, or sexual connection. We fight all the time and have trouble communicating. We are more connected to our children than each other. We're not sure what it is. We just know something is missing. Pretty much, when they mark all of these, or when there are a ton of these marked, you know that they're really disconnected. You know that their marriage is in trouble and that they're having a hard time, which is awesome because they're about to get breakthrough. They're going to this workshop and God is going to meet them. But during the rating process, you don't want to put them as a 4, okay? So the 3 ones to look for first are question 1, if they say divorce, that's a hint of that they could be in crisis. The reason why I'm going here is I'm trying to save my marriage from divorce. Question number 4, if they say I feel hopeless and alone all the time. And then question number 5, if they have a whole list of things where they're disconnected. If all those are in tandem and both spouses are saying that, then I would say they're probably a crisis couple, and I put them as a 1 to be safe. So say they don't put those crisis ones. Then the first thing I look for is I go to the next question is all about whether or not they want to be a leader. And so we have, I don't want to facilitate. I'd be willing, but I'm a bit hesitant. And then we have a bunch of different reasons for why they feel good about themselves being a facilitator. If they choose any of the reasons why they're good, why they would have that desire to be a facilitator, and they didn't choose any of those major crisis ones, even if there's just maybe one major crisis one, but not the rest, then they could still be a 3 or 4. Okay? So, and you can put them as, because every marriage has things to work on. If they're willing to lead, if they're willing to do it, and they're hungry, and they may have some issues, but not all of them together, then they can be a 3 or 4, because they have that desire to lead and whatnot. So that's kind of how we decide where they are in terms of 4, 3, 2, or 1. Now, with you rating married couples, you're going to get 2 surveys per couple, one from the husband and one from the wife. And what you need to do is you need to take the average of the 2 of them. So oftentimes if the husband fills out all the survey, there's no crisis issues, he wants to lead. The wife is very similar, but she says, I'm willing to lead, but a bit hesitant. Then I would put them as a 3 because she's willing and he's fully gung-ho, so that's a potential they could be raised up to lead, but they're not both on the same page. So you kind of take the average. Another thing to be aware of is if you get a couple where they are on polar opposites, one is depressed, one is in crisis, one is having a hard time, while the other one's saying, I want to lead a marriage workshop, things are great. Things are, they should not be leading. If they're not on the same page, if they're not connected, and even aware of where each other is at, then they should not be leading. And so the highest they should be is a 2. So that being said, go through your surveys, look for if they're in crisis. If they're in crisis and marking all those, give them a 1. If they have some of them and they don't want to lead, give them a 2. And if they want to lead and they only have maybe one of the crisis issues, then they can be a 3 or 4. And if both spouses want to lead and they only have 1 or 2 of the crisis issues, then they can be a 4. And that's how you rate them. And then the rest on how to actually put them into groups, it should explain it in your guys' leader's manual. So hopefully that helps. And I think you guys are going to have an awesome time watching the level of breakthrough that God's going to do in these small groups. It's absolutely incredible. And we've seen it happen over and over again.